Big Boy Restaurants International, LLC is a restaurant chain with its headquarters in Warren, Michigan, in Metro Detroit. Big Boy Restaurants also refers to Frisch's Big Boy Restaurants headquartered in Cincinnati. Big Boy was started as Bob's Pantry in 1936 by Bob Ian in Glendale, California, USA. The restaurant became known as Bob's, home of the Big Boy Hamburger, then as Bob's Big Boy. It became a local chain under that name and nationally under the Big Boy name, franchised by Robert C. Ian Enterprises. Marriott Corporation bought Big Boy in 1967. One of the larger franchise operators, Elias Brothers, purchased the chain from Marriott in 1987, moved the headquarters of the company to Warren, Michigan, and operated it until bankruptcy was declared in 2000. Following the bankruptcy, the chain was sold to investor Robert Liggett, Jr., who took over as chairman, renamed the company Big Boy Restaurants International and maintained the headquarters in Warren. The company is the operator or franchisor for 100 Big Boy restaurants in the United States. Big Boy Restaurants International also licenses 279 Big Boy restaurants operating in Japan. Immediately after Liggett's purchase, Big Boy Restaurants International then known as Liggett Restaurant Enterprise negotiated an agreement with the other large franchise operator, Frisch's Restaurants. The Big Boy trademarks in Kentucky, Indiana, and most of Ohio and Tennessee transferred to Frisch's ownership. All other Frisch's territories transferred to Liggett. Thus Frisch's is no longer a franchisee, but Big Boy Restaurants International and Frisch's are now co-registrants of the Big Boy name and trademark. Frisch's operates or franchises 121 Big Boy restaurants in the United States. Origin The Big Boy mascot The chain is best known for its trademark chubby boy in red and white checkered overalls holding a Big Boy sandwich. The inspiration for Big Boy's name, as well as the model for its mascot, was Richard Woodruff of Glendale, California. When he was 6 years old, Woodruff walked into the diner Bob's Pantry as Bob Ian was attempting to name his new hamburger. Ian said, "Hello, Big Boy" to Woodruff, and the name stuck. Warner Brothers animation artist Ben Washam sketched Richard's caricature, which became the character seen on the company trademark. The Big Boy character was revised in 1956 by an artist working for Ken Bird, a Big Boy paper product supplier, and Manfred Bernhard, son of legendary graphic designer Lucien Bernhard. This 1956 Big Boy figure was used for large painted fiberglass statues outside the restaurants, and was featured in The Adventures of the Big Boy comic book, a promotional giveaway for children visiting the restaurants. Bernhard produced the comic book for 40 years until 1997, and the comic book has since been produced by Craig Yo's Studio. Another long-time promotion was the Big Boy Club, a kids' club offering coupons and premiums to children, who joined by sending in an application from the comic book. In 1951, Bob Ian's original franchisee Dave Frisch developed a slightly different Big Boy character. He was slimmer, wore a side cap and was portrayed in a skipping posture, with Big Boy written on the sleeve rather than the chest of his shirt. Originally he wore striped overalls and had reddish or blonde hair, but now usually has checkered overalls and dark brown hair. Known as the East Coast Big Boy, he was registered to Frisch's and used for statues and comic books for Frisch's, and its sub-franchisees Manners and Azars. Before 1956, some franchisees, such as Shoney's, would use both versions, though never together. Since 1956, the Ian West Coast Big Boy design was used exclusively by all franchisees other than Frisch's, Manners and Azars. In the late 1960s both characters were redrawn to appear similar, incorporating the checkered outfit and darker hair from the West Coast design and the running pose and direction of the East Coast design. In the 1980s, the West Coast design lost the hamburger. Representing a de-emphasis of the hamburger in North American Big Boy restaurants, it also accommodated the Japanese Big Boy restaurants, which do not serve hamburgers on a bun. Big Boy statues Early versions of the fiberglass West Coast Big Boy statues were gigantic, measuring up to 14 feet tall with later versions as short as 4 feet. The early statues always included the Big Boy Hamburger above Mascot's raised right arm. Much later versions eliminated the hamburger with both arms clutching the suspenders instead. The hamburger remained a part of the Frisch's East Coast statues, though the slingshot was eliminated from the figure's back pocket. Although still used by that chain, some Frisch's restaurants currently display the West Coast statue instead. In recent years, Big Boy statues have come into conflict with local zoning ordinances. In 2002, Tony Matar, a Big Boy franchisee in Canton, Michigan, was cited in violation of local sign ordinances. The town claimed the statue was a prohibited second sign. Matar asserted that the 7-foot statue was a sculpture, not a sign. A 2004 compromise allows the existing statue to remain with the words Big Boy removed from the figure's bib. When a Brighton, Michigan franchise closed in early 2015 for financial reasons, zoning codes caused the entire sign topped with a rotating Big Boy statue be taken down before the restaurant could be reopened. In contrast, the Planning Commission in Naco, California was concerned that the statue was not Western enough. In response, the restaurant's Big Boy statue is now outfitted wearing a cowboy hat and boots. A few other modified statues are in official use. To conform with Gaylord, Michigan's alpine theme, the local restaurant's statue wears a green Tyrolean hat. In Cincinnati's Great American Ballpark, a Frisch's statue is painted wearing a 1970s Reds uniform with a Reds ball cap added. Frisch's Big Boy hamburgers are sold at 2 of the park's concession booths. Because of the closing or separation of former Big Boy restaurants, many West Coast statues were acquired by private individuals, often traded through eBay. Smaller versions of the statues are sold as coin banks and bobblehead figures. The 3-dimensional Big Boy figure was also used on early ashtrays, salt and pepper shakers, wooden counter displays, and as small unpainted pewter models. Gigantic air inflatable Big Boy figures are available and typically used for restaurant openings and special promotions, where permitted. The Big Boy Hamburger the signature Big Boy Hamburger, which is the original double-decker hamburger, started as a joke. In February 1937, members of the Glendale High School Orchestra, who were regular customers, visited Bobby unregistered trademark's pantry, one asking, "Oe, how about something different, something special?" Bobby improvised, creating the first Big Boy, intending the thing Oe look ridiculous, like a leaning tower Demand for the unique burger took off and Ian sought a snappy name, which became Big Boy. Some reports say Richard Woodruff was nicknamed Fat Boy, and the Big Boy was first called the Fat Boy Hamburger until discovering Fat Boy was a protected trademark. The Big Boy consists of 2 thin beef patties placed on a 3-layer bun with lettuce, a single slice of cheese, and either mayonnaise with red relish, Big Boy special sauce or tartar sauce on each slice of bun. Ian used a sesame seed bun while Frisch's used a plain bun and included pickles. The Big Boy Hamburger originally called for a 1/4 pound of fresh ground beef, but later, franchisees were permitted to use frozen beef patties, and the minimum content reduced to 1/5 of a pound of beef, perhaps in response to McDonald's Big Mac. Core menu items just as Bobby Ian's Big Boy Hamburger was served by all franchises, the early franchises also contributed signature menu items. Frisch's provided the Brawny Lad and Swiss Miss hamburgers, Shoney's contributed the Slim Jim sandwich and hot fudge ice cream cake, while strawberry pie was introduced by Eton Park. Hot fudge cake and strawberry pie remain popular dessert items chain-wide, but other items were not necessarily offered by all franchises, and franchises would sometimes change the item's name. The Slim Jim became the Buddy Boy at Frisch's, and Elby's renamed the Swiss Miss as the Brawny Swiss. Similarly, when franchisees left Big Boy, they would typically rebrand the Big Boy Hamburger. It became the Superburger, the Buddy Boy, the Big Ben, the Classic Double Decker, and Elby's Double Deck Hamburger. Big Boy offers breakfast, burgers and sandwiches, salads, dinner combinations, and various desserts. Regional franchises. In addition to the Bob's Big Boy name, the Big Boy concept, menu, and Mascot were originally licensed to a wide number of regional franchise holders. Because many of the early franchisees were already in the restaurant business when joining Big Boy was added to the franchisee name just as the Big Boy Hamburger was added to the franchisee's menu. In this sense it is confusing when referring to a chain, as each named franchisee was itself a chain and Big Boy could be considered a chain of chains. People tend to know Big Boy not simply as Big Boy but as the franchise from where they lived, such as Bob's Big Boy in California, Shoney's Big Boy in the South, or Frisch's Big Boy in much of Ohio, among the many others. Each regional franchisee typically operated a central commissary which prepared or processed foods and sauces to be shipped fresh to their restaurants. Other items were prepared at the restaurants daily, such as soups and breading of seafood and onion rings. Through the 1950s and 1960s the emphasis changed from drive-in restaurant to coffee shop and family restaurant. New franchisees without existing restaurants signed on. A larger standard menu was developed. Most adopted a common graphic design of menus and promotional items, offered by Big Boy but personalized to the franchise. Stock plans of restaurant designs were provided by Los Angeles architects Armit and Davis. In the 1960s, Big Boy and other drive-in restaurants could not compete with the spreading fast food restaurants such as McDonald's and Burger King. Big Boy built its last drive-in in 1964 and by 1976 only 5 of the chain's 930 restaurants offered curb service. Big Boy redefined itself as full service in contrast to fast food. However, in the late 1960s and 1970s Bob's, Shoney's and JB's also opened Big Boy Junior stores, designed as fast food operations which offered a limited menu. Sometimes called drive-ins, these junior stores did not use car hops. Big Boy's origins as a drive-in restaurant, required a much smaller investment to open and much lower costs to operate, a small building having no dining room or limited counter space. Thus persons of modest assets could become Big Boy operators. It was the profits from these operations which allowed not only additional drive-ins, but operators to build the modern restaurants with large pleasant dining rooms. Many of the early successful franchisees would probably not have assets sufficient to join Big Boy today. By 1979 there were more than 1,000 Big Boy restaurants in the US and Canada, and about 20 franchisees. Shoney's, Elias Brothers and Frisch's Euro-charter franchises controlled the vast majority. These mega franchisees paid practically no fees. For example, Frisch paid $1 per year for its core 4-state territory. After Bob's, the 4 original franchisees were Frisch's, Eaton Park, Shoney's and Elias Brothers, all clustered near the state of Ohio. All, including Bob's, remain in operation today, albeit Elias Brothers is simply known as Big Boy, and Eaton Park and Shoney's dropped Big Boy affiliation in the 1970s and 1980s. Big Boy developed named franchisees in several ways. Very quickly the Big Boy name and even the Big Boy character were being widely used without permission. Bobby Ann, needing diverse exposure for national trademark protection, offered very generous franchise agreements to Frisch's, Eaton Park and Parkette. In 1952, Jan instituted a formal franchise process and Elias Brothers became the first such official franchisee. Bobby Jan also settled trademark infringements allowing the rogue operator to become a licensed franchisee, such as McDowell's Big Boy in North Dakota. Sub-franchisees often used their own name and operated independently. Frisch's licensed Manners and Izars. Shoney's licensed Elby's, Becker's, Schaps, Lendy's and Yoder's. Elby Euro unregistered trademark S licensed Franklin Euro unregistered trademark S Big Boy in eastern Pennsylvania. Acquisitions and mergers also occurred. In the early 1970s Frisch's acquired Kip's Big Boy. JB's acquired Vips, Kibo's, Leo's and Bud's which were rebranded JB's. After buying Big Boy, Elias Brothers bought Elby's and TJ's. Elby's was unique in leaving and rejoining the Big Boy system. When Marriott purchased Big Boy in 1967, this included Bob's Big Boy. The name OE Bobby Euro unregistered trademark ZAR Euro would be used by all Marriott-owned Big Boys and became common in parts of the eastern US and elsewhere. far away from Bobby unregistered trademark's historic territory. Frisch's now owns the Big Boy name in a defined 4-state region, and Azaz and Bob's are licensed by Frisch's Big Boy and Big Boy Restaurants International, respectively. Many of the other former franchise owners have expanded into the former territories of other franchise holders. Prohibiting franchisees from publicly using their own names is intended to strengthen the trademark but also prevent defections, such as happened with Shoney's Big Boy retaining identity as Shoney's. The same occurred with Eaton Park, Elby's, Blendy's, JB's, and Abdo's, who kept their names after leaving Big Boy. Big Boy now permits operators to identify by location such as Torres Bay Big Boy in East Torres, Michigan. Unlike most modern franchises, the historic Big Boy franchisees differed somewhat from one another in pricing and menus. When Elias Brothers purchased Big Boy in 1987, intentions were to standardize the name and menu, but Bob's, Frisch's and McDowell's continue to offer distinctions from the standard Big Boy menu. Roster of named franchisees. Named Big Boy franchisees are listed below with territories, time span, founders and additional notes. As known, Abdo's opened as a High Boy franchisee in 1959 and changed the corporate name to Abdo's Big Boy in 1965. Other reports say Abdo's was a Big Boy franchise beginning 1959. Abdo's left Big Boy in 1994 over menu conflicts with Elias Brothers. Now defunct, many converted to Elksey Corporation's Bickford's family restaurants or remain vacant. Azaz Big Boy remains in operation in Fort Wayne, in Georgia. Azar, CEO is Alex Azar's son. Alex Azar became an original member of the Big Boy board of directors. Becker's Shoney's opened a restaurant in Rochester in the mid-1950s which may have become Becker's Big Boy. Trying to expand too quickly created a financial crisis in the end of the franchise. Bob's. California, Arizona, Nevada, Alaska, Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Indiana and Pennsylvania Turnpike and airport locations operated in several states by the Marriott Corporation, 1936+, founded by Robert C. Bobby Ann, the original Big Boy chain, which in Ian's time was confined to Southern California, Arizona and Nevada. Because Marriott developed and acquired Big Boy restaurants elsewhere, principally the northeastern U.S., Bob's developed a more diverse territory and identity. Presently, Bob's is again used only in Southern California, and no others under the domain of Big Boy Restaurants International are permitted to use franchise names for public identity. Ian became the original chairman of the Big Boy board of directors. Bob's operated 2 units. Acquired by JB's in the 1970s. Shiz Chap Barila was Bob Ian's stepson. Eaton Park Hatch and Peters were supervisors at Isley's in Pittsburgh. On Isley's business in Cincinnati, Hatch saw the success of the Frisch's Big Boy drive-in prompting contact with founder Bob Ian, who needed national exposure to gain national trademark protection. Eaton Park soon became the second Big Boy franchisee. When the 25-year franchise agreement expired, Eaton Park dropped Big Boy, attributed to the loss of drive-in popularity but primarily motivated by the end of the $1 per year license fee the franchise had enjoyed. Elby's, named after Ellis Boy, originally acquired the Big Boy rights to northern West Virginia through Shoney's. In 1966, Elby's expanded Big Boy into bordering Ohio counties, licensed through Frisch's, and into Pennsylvania as franchisor. When Frisch's refused existing terms on a third Ohio unit in 1971, Elby's dropped Big Boy affiliation in Ohio, leading to a long-running trademark battle by Frisch's. In 1984, Elby's dropped Big Boy overall when Shoney's franchisor for Elby's West Virginia Streza broke affiliation. Opened units in Maryland and Virginia after leaving Big Boy. Elby's was sold to Elias Brothers in 1988, becoming Big Boy again. Although officially stripped of the Elby's name, identity was so strong that the Elby's name continued in print advertisements. The last remaining Elby's closed in 2000 in response to the Elias Brothers financial crisis. Elias Brothers. In 1938 the brothers opened Fred's Chili Bowl in Detroit and later the Dixie Drive-In in Hazel Park, which would become the first Elias Brothers Big Boy. Considered the first official franchisee, because they were the first to formally apply to Bob Ian. Worked with Ian, Schoenbaum and Manfred Bernhard to create the iconic 1956 Big Boy character design and launched the comic book. Owned the Big Boy system from 1987 through 2000 when the bankrupt company was sold to Robert Liggett. Many Michigan units continue operations stripped of the Elias Brothers name, and these are the vast majority of Big Boy Restaurants International's American Big Boy stores. Fred Elias became an original member of the Big Boy board of directors. Franklin's sub-franchised by and originally operated as Elby's. After dropping Big Boy affiliation, Franklin's adopted a Benjamin Franklin theme, renaming the signature hamburger Big Boy as Big Ben. Sold the 12-unit chain to Hershey's Foods and Friendly's Restaurants in 1985. Frisch's added Big Boy to their established chain of ice cream shops. Unlike other franchisees, the stores did not directly use the Big Boy name. They remained Frisch's ice cream shops, not Frisch's Big Boy. Irvin's brother Lucien Lou Frisch became an original member of the Big Boy board of directors. Frisch is the Cincinnati restaurant chain and first franchisee, began serving Big Boy hamburgers in 1946, but opened their first Big Boy drive-in restaurant in 1948. Frisch's now operates 95 Big Boys and franchises 26 Big Boys to others. Frisch's sub-franchised to Azaz and Manners, which used the Frisch's-styled Big Boy, to Milton and David Bennett in 1955, who operate as Frisch's in Northwest Ohio and also licensed Elby's to operate 2 Big Boy units in the Upper Ohio Valley until 1971. In 2001 Frisch's became the perpetual owner of the Big Boy trademark in most of Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana and Tennessee, and relinquished all other Big Boy territories to Big Boy Restaurants International, to whom Frisch's is no longer a franchisee or licensee. On August 24, 2015, Frisch's was sold to an Atlanta-based private equity fund, ending family ownership and control of the chain. JB's. The first JB's Big Boy opened in 1961 in Provo, Utah. In the 1970s JB's expanded by acquiring neighboring Big Boy franchisees, Vips, Leo's, Kipo's and Bud's. In 1984 JB's attempted to break from Big Boy but settled in exchange for additional territory, including Central and Northern California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada and Arizona, where it operated as Bob's Big Boy. Citing the sale of Big Boy to Elias Brothers, in 1988 JB's allowed its Big Boy franchise to expire, removing 107 units from the Big Boy system. Currently 22 JB's restaurants operate in 6 states. JB's Betuv, a well-known Canadian businessman, was the franchisee for Canada generally, along with Roy Rogers Restaurants, both Marriott-owned brands. JB's of Canada grew to 32 Big Boy restaurants before selling to Elias Brothers. Kipo's Kipo came from the owners, Keith, Ed and Bob. 2 units were sold to JB's in 1974. Ken's named in honor of Bill Bemis, father Ken Bemis, who founded the White Log coffee shop chain. Ken's became Bob's in the late 1960s. Kip's Bell owned and operated Kip's of Texas, while Holman and Reed owned and operated Kip's of Oklahoma and Kansas. Acquired by Frisch's in 1972. Kip's territory was transferred to Big Boy Restaurants International in 2001. Bell became an original member of the Big Boy board of directors. Lend is owned by Goldstein but operated as Shoney's 1955 to 1959. Territory proximity to Yoda's angered Goldstein, and concurrent franchise with Kentucky Fried Chicken antagonized franchiser Alex Schoenbaum, prompting Lendy's to leave Big Boy. Renamed the Big Boy Hamburger as the Buddy Boy, and created a Buddy Boy mascot similar to Frisch's Big Boy character. Leo's. The first Leo's Big Boy opened in Great Falls, Montana in 1968. Grew to 4 units before being acquired by and renamed JB's in 1971. Manners, 1954 Euro 1979, founded by Robert L. and Ramona Manners, franchisee through Frisch's, used the Frisch-styled mascot design. Liked Frisch's, Manners was already established, having opened Manners Drive-In in 1939, 15 years before becoming a Big Boy franchisee. Paid Frisch's $10 per month for each location. In 1968, Manners Big Boy was sold to Consolidated Foods. Marriott purchased the 39 units in 1974 and 5 years later dropped the name Manners. Marks were owned by the Marcus Corporation. Some were sold, others were converted to Mark's Cafe and Coffee Mill and later Annie's American Cafe. Most now operate as Perkins. McDowell's A trademark infringement suit against McDowell was filed by Ian in 1959, ultimately resulting in a franchise agreement. Operates exclusively as a drive-through. McDowell's name was dropped and the remaining store is now called the Bismarck Big Boy. Mr. B's Shops franchised by Shoney's. Shops was abbreviated for Shapiro's. Operated 2 small units in Chattanooga. Latimer bought out the other partners and changed the name to its franchisors, Shoney's. Shoney's Parkette, originally called the Parkette, in 1952 it became Parkette Big Boy Shops. An unrelated Parkette Drive-In had opened in Kentucky, so in 1954, a public contest for a new name resulted in Parkette becoming Shoney's, which was also a reference to founder Alex Shoney Schoenbaum. Shoney's was a charter Big Boy franchisee and by 1984 became the largest franchisee, operating 392 Shoney's Big Boy units. Shoney's also sub-franchised to Becker's, Elby's, Schaps, Yoder's and Lendy's. Shoney's dropped its relationship with Big Boy in 1984 in order to expand into neighboring states where other franchisees own the trademark. Schoenbaum became an original member of the Big Boy board of directors. Ted's Massachusetts was divided between Ted's Big Boy in the east and Abdo's Big Boy in the west, corresponding to the division of Rhode Island and Connecticut between the two franchises. TJ's The 4 stores were purchased by Big Boy. The 2 Rochester stores were closed in 1992, and 1 Syracuse store was sold to a local investor. Tops, Totes, Tunes. In the mid to late 1950s, Alex Schoenbaum seeded various franchises including Tunes. 2 drive-in restaurants opened. By the early 1960s, one closed and the other was purchased by and rebranded as Shoney's. Vips refers to 2 distinct restaurant chains. The Big Boy franchisee relevant here, Vips Big Boy of New Mexico, was acquired by JB's Big Boy in 1972. The other, Vips Restaurants of Salem, Oregon, was not a Big Boy franchisee but sold units to JB's Big Boy, which operated them as Bob's Big Boy. The non-Big Boy, Salem-based chain had 53 locations at its peak, all sold and rebranded, including 35 to Denny's in 1982 and 16 to JB's in 1984. Yoder's Young was Leonard Goldstein's brother-in-law. Merged with Lendy's. There were various franchisees and sub-franchisees who operated under another franchisee's name or simply as Big Boy. Big Boy of Florida now defunct. Meddy's Big Boy of Windsor, Ontario was not a franchisee, though sometimes identified as one and using a similar-looking mascot. In 1965 Bob Ian sued Meddy's for trademark infringement but failed because Big Boy was judged not widely known in Canada. The case is considered important in Canadian and international trademark law. In 1973 Elias Brothers bought Meddy's and established an Elias Big Boy on Meddy's original site. John Batov, Sr. owned the rights to Big Boy for the remainder of Canada, which he sold to Elias Brothers in 1979. Outside of North America, Big Boy Japan owns and operates 279 Big Boy Hamburger steak and grill restaurants throughout Japan. Founded in 1977, Big Boy Japan now also operates 45 Victoria Station restaurants in Japan and is a subsidiary of ZA Copyright NSHO Holdings Company, Limited. The Japanese Big Boy restaurants do not offer the Big Boy Hamburger or most other American Big Boy menu items, offering a distinct menu instead. They also offer beer and wine. Big Boy also operated restaurants in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, the Philippines and Thailand. In addition, Big Boy established at Burger, a new concept casual dining restaurant in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is now closed. In popular culture, the Big Boy mascot appears in the 1997 and 1999 films Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, and Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, as the disguise for the rocket ship of Dr. Evil. In the 2008 comedy Sex Drive, Ian Lafferty goes on a cross-country road trip to meet his online date, Miss Tasty, beside a Big Boy's restaurant in Knoxville, Tennessee. The restaurant is briefly mentioned in the song Open All Night by Bruce Springsteen on his 1982 album Nebraska. Big Boy is referenced in the Japanese manga Tokyo Ghoul with the name changed to Big Girl, assumedly for trademark purposes. The Big Boy mascot appears as a main character in the 2009 short film Logorama. The Lard Laid Donuts mascot in the animated TV sitcom The Simpsons is a parody of the Big Boy mascot. See also, List of hamburger restaurants, List of casual dining restaurant chains. References. Further reading, Hansen, Christian. The Big Boy Story, King of Them All. Hoagin Printing. ISBN 978-0967194363. Langdon, Philip. Orange Roofs, Golden Arches, The Architecture of American Chain Restaurants. Knopf. ISBN 978-0394741291. External links, Big Boy Company sites, Big Boy Restaurants International, Frisch's Big Boy Restaurants, Frisch's Big Boy of Northwest Ohio, Bennett Enterprises, Bob's Big Boy Restaurant, Burbank, CA, Big Boy Japan. Partial English translation by Google. Other sites, Roadside Peak, Big Boy East, Big Boy Japan, Roadside Architecture, Big Boy Frisch's Big Boy, JBHS Class of 1967, Bob's Big Boy Images, Big Boy Statues, Boba Unregistered Trademark S. Big Boy Statue Graveyard offers a strange nostalgia trip. BuzzFeed, OE Big Boy Statue Graveyards, Lendy's web pages, This Man Cafe, Bismarck Unregistered Trademark S. Big Boy. Still going strong after 55 years, Mark's Big Boy statue from the Wisconsin Historical Society, Armit and Davis Restaurant Design renderings for Bob's Big Boy for Azar's Big Boy for Frisch's Big Boy for Kip's Big Boy.